So thank you, Lydia, and welcome to Leading Through Uncertainty, Resilient Strategies for Higher Education Administrators. I'd like to introduce you to NACCE's President and CEO, Dr. Rebecca Corbin, who's going to kick off our call for us.
Thank you, Suzanne, and good afternoon, everyone. It's 4 o'clock here on the East Coast, and I'm just happy to be with you today. I appreciate the opportunity to share on an important topic. And Suzanne, if we go to the first slide, where we're going to begin is really with a little storytelling, and I have to give my colleague Lydia and Amber sort of a nod to this. We did an icebreaker as a staff at another professional development, and we all had a chance to share a little bit about our stories and who we are. And so I'm going to do a little bit of that today with the intention of not only just sharing with you, but also what I hope is that you'll start to reflect on your own story and how that impacts you as a leader, regardless of what your role is in the classroom, on campus, or in the community, because I think it really impacts the way that we lead others and the way that we can kind of make our way through challenging times. So I'll begin there. So this is me at the beginning of my life. So happy baby, which kind of connects to something our NACCE team was talking about a little bit earlier, is the importance of laughing and joy every day. And when we are young children and babies, you just see that sparkle of joy. And that's one of the things that we want to do at NACCE, is try to bring some of that back in, along with tools and resources. So I always like to tell people that my life literally began in higher education. I was born in Bloomington, Indiana. My parents were residents of what they call married housing back in the day as graduate students. So, but they were first generation college students too. So they had a lot really of things in common with community college. So I think as we go to the next slide, one of the things that I've been writing about and speaking about is really the influences that happen in our time. And I think it's very relevant to the time that we're living through right now. And when I think about the cultural influences of the 1970s and 80s, which is when I sort of grew up, is you think about what was happening at that time. You had television and media expansion. You had music and pop culture. So you had great advances in that area. And you also had a lot of social movements and awareness. If you think of what was going on at that time with the Vietnam War and some of the protests and things like that, you think, oh my goodness, here we are again in some of those changing economic and political climates. But there was also huge innovation with toys and technology. So when I think back in my life, I think about the onset of video games, for example, and how that was not a natural thing, because as a latchkey Gen X kid, like I got kicked out of the house and said, go entertain yourself for the day and then come back. But it was a huge influence. So I just kind of encourage you, regardless of where you are in your professional or life journey, is think about some of the things that influenced you. So as we go to the next slide, I wanted to just comment a little bit on early identity. I have an interest and have done some research in various areas, but I think the world that we're born into, but really how we identify. So I know Suzanne has a great interest in birth order and generational things. So I did a little bit of reflecting myself on this. So I was thinking about myself as a child growing up in the Midwest, with most of my family being in Massachusetts. Or what was my early identity shaped by? So being an Irish Catholic, middle class, middle child, sort of taught to be responsible and take care of others. But it was always ingrained in me that education was very important. And some of the more narrow options for girls that occurred back then. And I know in my own early identity, and it's really shaped into the way that I lead, is really my parents wanted to equip me with a fear of all things. And so one of the things that we try to teach in entrepreneurial mindset is really evaluating risk, but you don't really want to approach everything with that sort of fearful mindset. You want to evaluate risk. And then lastly, I think about some of the movies that really shaped my life, and I think about The Sound of Music, which is a lot of joy, and even through adverse times. For many of you that might have seen this old movie, you had some very dark influences, but you also had good in people, and I feel like the people in our circle and in our community really bring that out in communities. So I kind of reflect on that as well. So as we go to the next slide, one of the things that I think is important for all of us is really to think about what powers our work. And I didn't know until about probably 12 years ago what entrepreneurial mindset was or how it worked or anything like that. But what I found, and this is what I hope you'll find if you're new to NACCE or you've been a longtime member, is that if you really practice entrepreneurial mindset, it can help you tremendously. So I have my two little adorable children that are now young adults on the left, and my husband that I love very much. So we'll be celebrating our 29th anniversary later this year. So I think getting through life, raising children, having family dynamics, and then I have my little dog Parker, who's on the right, who is a little rescue dog who has learned to navigate everything in life without vision because he had some visual problems. So I think about transition and change and try to really approach those things with that type of mindset. And I hope that you will do the same. So as we go to the next slide, this is just sort of a summary and what I really want you to think about as educators and leaders of why I believe it's really important to understand our origin stories. Is I've been thinking, especially more recently, about really the importance of authentic leadership. And if you read a lot of the books, which we all have about leaders, you sort of have different models or archetypes of leaders. But I've begun to think about it in terms of each of us has a certain set of talents, abilities, and natural skills that if we really understand why we respond in a certain way, why we engage with others in a certain way, it can really empower us, regardless of what our personality style is, to be effective. I think also our origin stories shape our vision and our purpose. I think the most important quality of a leader, especially in turbulent times, is seeking clarity. We've all had that experience before where everything is fuzzy. You don't know exactly what to do. And I think the natural reaction is to either to become stuck or to engage in busy work that's not the important work that we need to do as leaders. So I think all of this is to say that, with origin stories, regardless of where you are in your professional life, I think we can all improve on the emotional intelligence end. Like we're all trying to do that through the professional development that we do. And if we're teaching, we try to do it with our students. But we really need to cultivate that within ourselves. And I think what happens when we hit tough times or resources are more scarce, sometimes you tend to want to go one way or the other, either full hard drive ahead or you'll retreat. But understanding that, a lot of these challenges really are an invitation to cultivate resilience in our lives. And I think of all of the students that I've come in contact with and some of our middle school students that I've gotten to know over the years through some of the STEM programming, these students are so resilient. And I know all of us have things in life that come dressed as adversity that are really challenges to learn. I think also by sharing our stories authentically, we can connect with others and create meaning in life. And if you read studies and articles about how disconnected people are and really the intrusion sometimes of social media, that we don't have engaging conversations like we're having so much today and sharing things. And so, really, all in all, what I'd love for you to think about is how your origin story, regardless of whether it's very humble or it's very privileged or it's something in between, it's really a framework for growth. And I think it can help you and it can help all of us achieve our goals. So going to the next slide, one of the things that I was reflecting back on, and I think this might help you for your own framework. If you think about sort of somebody who's really entrepreneurial, you would not think about somebody like me. I told you a little bit about my background and who I am. My parents and the community that I was in prize safety. Get a safe job. Don't put yourself out there. Sort of have a low profile. Don't talk about crazy, risky things. Big, hairy, audacious goals. Not even part of the vocabulary. But this can be a superpower and a strength and a leader, because in risk averse households, what was prized and what I saw prized in my own household was stability and predictability. Anyone on the call who has an Irish Catholic background knows that you had one meat, one potato, and one vegetable pretty much every night. And it was typically the same thing. So not exactly the most exciting experience, but you always knew what to expect. And I think as a leader, what I try to do in uncertain times is certainly have more variety, but in the people that are in my sphere, either the people that report to me or the people who are in my organization or who are volunteers or board members, I want them to feel safe. But sometimes you've got to share information that's a little scary, but you've got to know that you've got a plan moving forward. Equally important, I think, origin story and impact on leadership is that innovation can be learned, almost like strength training. You can develop that muscle. And one of the things, if you come from a more risk averse background, you just naturally do part of the entrepreneurial process, which is testing and validation. Why? Because you're not going to go like, diving off the cliff, right? You're going to kind of look over and see how safe it is. That's a very entrepreneurial quality. As I mentioned a moment ago, adversity fuels courage, and I think the desire for change. And this last one is really important to me, because this is what I spend a lot of time thinking about these days, is really, what is the legacy? What is the legacy of NACCE as it kind of approaches its 25-year anniversary here in a short couple years? And what is my legacy as the leader? Like, what do I want people to have at their disposal once it's time for somebody else to sit in my chair? And I think that having those early experiences kind of shapes me in that way. And people that have had different experiences might approach it differently. So moving on to the next slide, um, I just wanted to kind of have a call out and, challenge yourself. Start writing down your story. I was listening to a podcast this morning that said if you're dealing with a lot of stress, what you should do is not give yourself an outline. Just put pen to paper and just start writing things down, because your true self will tell you these are the things that you're thinking about, not only your worries, but your great ideas of the things that you want to accomplish in your world and in your professional life. So going on to the next slide, I wanted to just share a definition of entrepreneurial mindset for leadership, which is a hodgepodge of a lot of different definitions, which is why there's not a source listed here. But my belief is that entrepreneurial mindset is a way of thinking and approaching challenges that focuses on innovation, problem solving, taking initiative. It also means being proactive and adaptable and willing to take calculated risks to create value and seize opportunities. So the emphasis here is everything I've been talking about for the first few minutes, which is resiliency, curiosity, and a growth-oriented perspective. So I know that's a lot of words, but I think what you won't see in there is starting a business necessarily. Yes, that can be part of it, but our belief at NACCE is that you can be entrepreneurial in any endeavor that you choose to do. So moving along to the next slide, just a couple of things to contextualize why mindset matters now. No big breaking news here. Higher ed is in flux. There's uncertainty everywhere. NACCE itself was hit by an impact of some of the government downsizing, and we had already been thinking about it. And my colleague Trenton's going to talk about some of the things of kind of thinking of things in advance. Thinking about mindset over method. Sometimes people can get so ingrained in the way of doing things that it kind of removes them from the creativity that might come into your mind if you sort of open yourself up to different ways of doing things. I think also a lot about teaching for the jobs of the future, and that's the space that NACCE itself is ideating on a lot these days, is how do we help prepare the next generation of educators and leaders and presidents for jobs, for communities, for things that don't exist in the present form. And then finally, mission and sustainability is always important. I think that is going to be the differentiator that allows us to attract more funding and more partners. You know, philanthropic groups and things like that, they're not looking for the same old, same old. If we're trying to get a million new apprentices hired in a short period of time, well, you can't certainly do it the old way because you'll never get to that scale, for example. And certainly a global focus. UN Sustainability Development Goals, without question, drive economic mobility and student engagement. And that's what you're going to start to hear about more at NACCE, is really the onset of AI as it becomes more integrated into what we do, and thinking about the world in terms of this global economy where we can create better and faster together. So the next slide is just really a nod to, I think, my colleagues and people that I really care about and love, that lead with this, what I'm going to call a go-giver mindset. If you're looking for a book to pick up, and one of my colleagues and I were chatting about this the other day, in all of our communities, many of you are probably part of these organizations. We have chambers of commerce, we have rotaries, and the thing to think about, and it sounds antithetical, but I lived through this before in the pandemic and just found it to be so true, is that we kind of put things aside because everything was turned upside down, and kind of approach things with a philosophy of, we are going to help whoever needs it. If somebody really, really, really wants to get engaged with one of our programs, but there's a barrier of funding or something else, we are going to help them find a way to do that. So, some of these laws, to think about, just as a person who's been on the planet for a while, I have found these to be so true. The law of value, your worth equals what you give to others. The law of compensation, your income is determined by the number of people you serve and how well you serve them. What's your unique value proposition? The law of influence, the amount you have is determined by how much you put others first. The law of authenticity, which is really part of my little part of this talk of a webinar. And then importantly, the law of receptivity is to stay open. But I think the main thing takeaway is really the most valuable gifts that we have are ourselves. And if you're authentic, it makes your gift that you're giving to others very priceless, because we are very different. And that's what makes us effective as leaders. So moving on to the next slide, many of you may be familiar with the mission of NACCE, to foster entrepreneurial mindset and innovative action. Membership, which is all of you, are the heart of what we do. And our vision is really to uplift communities and elevate prosperity. So you'll note it doesn't say to create X number of businesses or entrepreneurs and things like this. So I just remind you, we have all of that information on our website as well. Going to the next slide, this is just a little snapshot of who NACCE serves and what we do. And I think the main point from this slide I wanted to highlight is that the skillpoint.com platform, which is a free career exploration tool, all 1,100 community colleges are on it, is really, I think, our give back not only to our members, but to communities across the country. Because what it does is it opens up opportunities through this 90-second quiz, where students can be directed to one of your colleges, where they can get upskilled, make more money, have a more satisfying career, and find out about financial support that may not be readily available in their own community. So I'm going to go to the next slide here as well. I'm not going to walk through all of this. I did this a little bit with the staff yesterday, and I do it with myself periodically, is to say, NACCE has had such an impactful journey. I've only been the CEO for the last 10 and a half years, but it's grown a lot. I think it's really a function of the members, a strong board, and really dedicated staff. But there have been ups and downs before. And, right now we're sort of in the process of really evaluating how can we be most helpful to our members. And one of the ways that we're trying to do that is through webinars like this one. So Suzanne, if we go to the next slide, I'm not going to get into a lot of detail on this. If we had like another half an hour, I'd tell you some really interesting stories. But I think we've all been in this situation. I know I certainly have, where you hear the story of the frog in the boiling pot. So the frog's kind of hanging out in the warm water and it feels really great. And then slowly it gets hotter and hotter and hotter. And I think we've been in those situations. It could be with employees, it could be with donors even, it could be with board members where we don't recognize some of the growing danger. And I think as a transformational leader, and one of the lessons that I've learned is if you get in touch with your origin story, you'll know, like in my particular case, I can tolerate a lot. So I'm the frog who's in the pot when it's getting like almost to the boiling point because I can, power through it. But that's not always the best thing for a leader to do. And so as I become more aware of some of my tendencies, I've kind of developed my own prescription of how do you climb out of the pot before you end up, being served on the plate for dinner, as they might say. So you need to recognize the danger, which is really being self-aware, which is what I've been talking about. You need to act decisively. So the next time you're kind of feeling like you're that frog in the pot, you need to leap. You need to break that inertia, because if you just stay there and you stay stuck in a situation that's either robbing your passion or it's an unhealthy situation, you're going to end up in a bad situation. Using available resources, having a lifeline and a plan, which is what we talk a lot about at NACCE, is having those trusted relationships, whether it's a colleague, whether it's a volunteer, whether it's a friend. You can tell them the story and you'll trust that they can help you navigate out of it. And then we come back, of course, to resiliency. And my last thing is seek cooler waters. You say, sometimes you just need to change your environment. When my kids were little, we lived in New Jersey for a long time. If I had just a terrible, horrible day, sometimes we would just pack up and we'd just head to the beach. And I would always say to them at that time, Mother Ocean will just heal things. And it was true. Like you just mentally, you just take a break. And then you come back and you're in a much better position to deal with that problem at hand. So as we go to the next slide here, these are just a couple of things, lessons learned at NACCE, about listening, about practicing entrepreneurial mindset, working with AI and other tools. I haven't mentioned it yet, but I think forgiveness, honestly, is one of the most powerful things. Has nothing to do really with community colleges, but it's more of a life lesson that I've learned is, when you make a mistake or you fail to achieve a goal or whatever, learn to forgive yourself, but also forgive others when they fall short. Now, don't be the frog in the boiling pot. If you're in a situation where people are really taking advantage of that, that's a whole other situation. But I think you can get there being reflexive. So Suzanne, if you go to the next slide, I wanted to end in sort of an authentic way. And if you'll indulge me, because I started a couple minutes late, I'm sorry, I don't want to take time from my colleagues, but I just wanted to read this poem to you because people that know me know I love nature. This is a picture that I took a year ago when I was with my sister and my daughter and my niece of the sun rising. It was like six o'clock in the morning. It was freezing. We had sweatshirts on. So I'm going to read this poem and then I'm going to end and turn it right over to the next speaker. But Mary Oliver is a wonderful poet for any of you who need poetry to kind of jazz up your leadership style. So I'm going to read this to you now. One day you finally knew what you had to do and began, though the voices around you kept shouting their bad advice, though the whole house began to tremble and you felt the old tug at your ankles. Mend my life, each voice cried, but you didn't stop. You knew what you had to do. Though the wind pried its stiff fingers at the very foundations, though their melancholy was terrible, it was already late enough and a wild night, and the road full of fallen branches and stones. But little by little, as you left their voices behind, the stars began to burn through the sheets of clouds, and there was a new voice, which you slowly recognized as your own, that kept you company as you strode deeper and deeper into the world, determined to do the only thing you could do, determined to save the only life you could save. So thank you, Suzanne. I'm going to turn it myself on mute and turn it back to you.
Okay, it's Suzanne again, and we're going to get into strategies for communicating a clear vision using digital storytelling to re-engage students, parents, and donors in a divided media environment. So I've been doing this a long time. I've been marketing higher education for 20 plus years, and we have our ups and downs. So understanding the current landscape is very important because public confidence in higher education has significantly decreased. Only 36% of Americans express high confidence in its value, down from 57% a decade ago. And that's because of the higher cost of higher education and then the jobs that maybe do or do not exist out there. So one of the ways that we can go ahead and use marketing to rebuild trust is that we want to lead with outcomes. So I love this example from Wade Tech, where they showcase real graduate success stories, job placements, and salary increases. So you really want to make sure that you're using data-driven outcomes, things like 80% of our grads are employed within 6 months, because people do want some sort of guarantee that it's going to be worth their time and worth their money to come, educate with you. Why does this work? So it works because by showcasing successful alumni and job placement rates, community colleges can demonstrate the tangible benefits of their programs. Um, it can help create pipelines for internships, apprenticeships, and job placements. And this is very important now because, especially among people who are part of Gen Z born after 1998, they really want that hands-on experience. You got to remember that these people have grown up with video games, and you don't learn how to play a video game, right, by reading the instructions and then trying it. You just jump in it and start working. So this is really effective with that demographic. And it also enhances your institutional credibility. You also want to look at community-centric messaging. So you want to position your college as a vital part of the local community. So when you're connected to the businesses and the nonprofits and the organizations within your community, people are going to feel more part of your organization, and they feel are going to be more invested in it. So looking at sharing stories about community impact, collaborations with local businesses, workforce development. I have an example here. Let's see if this works for me from University of the District of Columbia. And this is one of from their workforce development page. And you can see here that they're highlighting the different kinds of things that they're doing. So they have a community expo. They're talking about enrollment, but they're also talking news and updates. Here's us out in the community. Here's how we're doing things. And here's where we're having a real impact. Okay. The reason this works is it enhances trust and credibility. Credibility is extremely important, again, with all demographics, but especially as you skew younger, because you have to remember the way that social media and the internet has really impacted people's vision or what they can trust or what they can't trust. It's a big thing. So you want to the trust and credibility, but it also increases engagement. So the more people feel a part of your program, the more likely they're going to continue with it. It represents authenticity and it's cost effective. You're already doing this stuff. You might as well get the word out and share it with your community. Another thing I think is very important in these days is to focus on micro credentials and lifelong learning. So continuous learning has been important for a long time. So I'm somebody who started in the marketing field at the advent of the internet. So I started out was pretty much traditional media and print-based marketing all the way to where we are here. So I had to learn the internet, then I had to learn the email marketing, and then Web 2.0 came, and then social media, and then we have digital streaming and how we consume media is different. And the same is true for all fields. There's so much change over the last 30 years. We really want to look at those micro credentials, those stackable credentials that people can get to show that they are keeping up with the times. So here is an example from Maricopa Community College about micro credential pathways. And they have all sorts of stuff that you can get certified in, whether it's behavioral health, data analysis, IT fundamentals, workforce professional skills. Lots of really, really good stuff. And there's also they're also promoting lifelong learning opportunities. So education and continuing education is not just for your traditional age student. It's also for working adults because you need to stay abreast of all the new technologies, the new skills that you're going to need. So this is also from Maricopa, and they had their lifelong learning program, but they also have senior citizen tuition rates, which are really good. A lot of schools have a learning and retirement, so they can go either way. It can be something that's avocational, or it can be something that is learning a new skill. And this works because it aligns your school with workforce demands. So by providing flexibility and accessibility, you provide recognition and credibility, right? We all want to get recognized for what we know and what we've learned. It also appeals to the desire for continuous personal and professional development. So another thing that you can do to communicate during these turbulent times is to collaborate with industry partners. So by promoting partnerships with local industries to emphasize hands-on training, it's a great way to feature testimonials for employers who hire graduates. So these partnerships are especially important now that, especially like in manufacturing, now that it's becoming much more high-tech than it ever has been before. So I have an example here from the College of DuPage, and they have a whole project hire at apprentice program. So you can look at different areas, whether it's medical assistant, manufacturing, electromechanical. These are some great programs. You can see that they have, excuse me, they have all, okay, let's go one back. Sorry about that, folks. Okay, so here we are. So they have all sorts of different programs that you can go through. And why does this work? Well, it builds trust and legitimacy with an industry endorsement, right? It enhances enrollment, student engagement, and really that hands-on learning becomes so important. It also aligns with the workforce development trends. So depending on what kind of community you're in, you're going to be needing different kinds of skilled trades workers. So for instance, where I live in Bay City, Michigan, it's real close to Saginaw, we are in need of chemical process technicians. So our local college has a program that actually is partnering with the Dow Chemical Company, where they'll train workers to be chemical process technicians, and then Dow will hire them. So this is like great. It's a win-win on both parts. It's great for the students. It's great for the community. It's great for the company, and it's great for the college. And then leveraging digital storytelling. So you really want to look at embracing platforms like Instagram Reels, YouTube, and being able to share video. And the reason this is important is 80% of the content now on the internet is video. And people are really used to seeing video, and it's something that you can get more engagement with than other media. So here is an example from Bakersfield College.
Bakersfield College hasn't been the same without you, but we're excited to welcome you back. We've taken this time to make innovations all across campus. Whether you're coming back in person or online, our classes work for any lifestyle. We have new buildings on the BC campus, and you can even attend classes at our locations in Delano and Arvin. Our new online student information desk lets you talk with BC counselors and other student support at a time that's convenient for you. The KCCD app improves campus safety and makes sure that we continue to have 0 cases of COVID-19 transmission on campus. If you enroll now, you can receive up to $6,000 to go towards your education. There's never been a better time to go back to school. Reimagine your life and create your future at the home of the Renegades.
Okay, so why does this work? Well, it works because it captures attention quickly, and people can really see what they're getting. So short form videos are designed to convey messages succinctly, and it can showcase authentic campus life. Video platforms present genuine glimpses of student experiences. If you're like somebody like me who went to college in the 90s, I wouldn't even be able to envision this at that time when I was getting out of high school. You had to actually go to campus to see what it was all about. And now we can get that all online, and you can use it to your benefit to increase the trust and communicate better with your key constituents. Okay, now I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Trenton Hightower, Executive Director of Membership and Workforce Development. Trenton?
Thank you, Suzanne. I appreciate that. What a great opportunity to think about return on investment and thinking about the initiatives coming up. Our next slide actually will start to share some of those good ideas with you. What we did was we actually checked on some research, and we're finding the top 5 issues in higher education. I wanted to find out what they were identifying. Serving as an assistant vice chancellor for the Virginia Community Colleges and working with all 23 community colleges gave me such an insight to think about how a system operates and how a whole state thinks about retention and enrollment. There's some strategies that we just heard from Suzanne that talked about how we need to be looking at enrollment and thinking about retention. I'm going to share some ideas about that. There's funding gaps, workforce initiatives. We just talked about digital ideas and access. These are the 5 top issues. The first one I want to share with you is on the next slide. It talks about enrollment decline and enrollment retention. Knowing that there's fewer students, you already heard from Suzanne, thinking about apprenticeship programs, certifications, boot camps. With the fact that business and industry are creating their own certifications, Google, Amazon, certain employers are creating their own initiatives. Even if power companies have their own apprenticeship programs and they're not associated with the Department of Labor. We're finding that the workforce alignment that you heard Suzanne talk about is even more challenging than ever before. So if a community college wants to offer a degree or a program and not be aligned with workforce and these certifications or the requirements of business and industry, you're going to find yourself in a tough area. The need for innovation and engagement and retention has to do with what Suzanne just went over, and that's new communications. It also means communicating with students that don't go to college websites. And how are you going to find a tool that helps you organically find individuals that don't think college is for them? There's, based on the Department of Labor and education, they talk about 30% of the students that drop out of high school statistically across the country. They're not looking at a college website for their choice of career and education or changing their lives. So we've got to find some other mechanisms to do that. NACCE's been exploring that strategy. We have something called skillpoint.com, and that is an idea that we're working on to continue supporting our membership and initiatives and helping NACCE be successful in helping reach individuals for our members in that area. But it also is changing because the partnerships in the community are changing as well. You need to find those local partners, make that initiative happen. And it needs to be more than the old-fashioned set up a table and have handouts or go to an open house. You need to find new creative ways that make meaningful intentions. And I want to share a few with you. I want you to think about recruiting in this new generation and this past generation with more hands-on learning. The strategies of reaching individuals and showing them hands-on experiences is important. You're finding now that some of the hands-on programs even have rodeos where they have competitions. You're trying to create a competition, a friendly competition that makes this exciting to be a part of, and or to teach what that new career or job could be about would be also creating a competition where they show up. We actually have been involved with NACCE with helping to provide pitch contest initiatives. And providing a pitch contest funding through NACCE, we're engaging people that's inside the college or outside the college in these pitch contests that need to maybe gain skills and certifications to be able to run or start a business. Think about trying to do something different than you've normally done. Try to build out value-oriented sessions that give this participant something at the end. Share something with them that they can take value in. You're trying to find a way to give action-oriented initiatives. Even as creative as creating trivia nights or trivia events, something that's different that brings audiences to your college or campus for credit or non-credit programs has to be different than what you've currently been doing if you want to reach this new market. We heard Suzanne talk about YouTube videos. And one thing we learned even early on during YouTube, that bad video is better than no video, and that people are used to seeing different kinds of video now more than ever because of smartphones and technology. along with short little clips and initiatives to get their attention. These are 4 ideas where you're thinking about doing something different in your retention and your recruitment efforts and keeping the student active. I loved when we had the phone stress challenge with faculty members, and yet some faculty members were smart enough to create exercises where the students could pick up their phone, look up research data, participate in the class with what they could find in searches, and then put the phone away. Well, this is going to become true now even for AI. How are we going to engage the AI into the intentions of the instruction for retention purposes and having activities where students won't drop out because we have such an active member process in that? We heard what Suzanne said about the confidence of education. We've got to do things differently. Next slide actually starts to talk more about affordability and funding gaps. You need to find creative payment plans. I'm going to go right to the bottom first. Find ways for them to support their initiatives. In the top one, it says consider online and in-classroom combination for lowering instructional costs and thinking about how you do that. It takes a special instructor, though, to be able to carry an online group and also an in-classroom course. But that would be one way to include more revenue for a program that could happen, and educating and working with different groups. There are some strategies for doing that. We held at NACCE our own training program as a virtual company, and I was really impressed by how we engaged our team in that initiative. Our manager of that day was able to put us into work groups, out of work groups, into sessions, out of sessions, and keep us all working through a group activity without losing connectivity. It was amazing, and it's possible academically today more than ever. Got to find efforts to think about new scholarships and new ways to align. Workforce alignment, you heard Suzanne talk about that. I want you to recognize that as you look through thinking about finding new tuition initiatives, every employer has tuition reimbursement dollars if they match the IT skills and technical skills that they need, if it matches the healthcare certification or credentials their employees need. And also in the trades, you have to be able to align with what the Department of Labor apprenticeship initiatives might be. When you think about aligning with employers today, these national certifications and credential skills are essential to be a part of your program, and you've got to find a way to make sure that you can fulfill those high demand needs, but be able to help the student pass that national exam or that national program, be it through Cisco, in healthcare through clinical medical assistance or medical billing and coding certification, or in trades with the welding, the fact they have to send away a part of that product to be approved by the national initiative for certifying and credentialing welders. Real-time labor market statistics are challenging because the government data is 2 years old. You can get lightcasts, and that's great for projecting for the future. One simple way I would challenge you to think about this is just go out whether you need to maybe run a pharmacy certification course. There's the idea of connecting with employers, which is hard work as well. You need to think about how you can connect with employers. Internships. Next slide. Digital AI, urgent need for modernization, and thinking about how you connect with AI and get your organization involved. Remember about the phone in the classroom. This is about bringing AI as part of your instructional strategies. It's being talked about so much that if you don't have that infused into some of the program initiatives, you will not meet the current demands of the workforce issues when they come out. There's also, as Suzanne said, the new jobs of AI, AI prompter, AI initiatives. You can even ask AI, what are the upcoming IT positions or technology positions or AI associated careers that we're anticipating for the future. It's really about getting in line with that. We've had to do that I'm old enough to have lived through the dot-com crash, through the 2008 crash. When the economy was challenged, you had to find a way to retool and reorganize. As Becky said in the beginning, you're thinking about your personal story and your history. And she also said, to get innovative, we have to get out of the mindset that we've been in the past. And so as leaders, we have to think about that. The next slide actually talks about the next top 5 issues, thinking about access for our students. This is using the tools that Suzanne talked about, the idea of thinking about hybrid programs, all the strategies that you're starting to work into your systems to be able to meet the access issues, and thinking about at the very end, public-private partnerships that can help fund or help build the services you need in these areas to sustain running the program successful today. This is part of that new revenue generation and making sure that you're able to meet some of the demands and challenges of the community, which you're currently involved with. And it really has been important to create public-private partnerships with agencies that have different resources, facilities, or money, because you might find yourself in the next few years in a scarcity mode, as described in the beginning for these times. The next slide actually starts to talk about 5 issues that are associated with funding and sustainability. Funding and sustainability is that reliance that we've had right now on our tuition, but we're going to have to figure out ways to run short-term classes that can meet the demands of business and industry. And this is around training contracts or working with your fixed assets of your instructor and your materials and your classroom and your equipment. And how can you find a way to meet needs in the community? This is a limited idea of thinking of limited budget and allocations for credit-bearing programs. So you need to be able to start thinking about how you can do some things different in regards to corporate training, business and industry training. The final thing is the need about scalability, understanding training needs assessments, organizational assessments, and how to measure training results. This is that whole corporation strategy, and an individual that can meet with an employer to help derive needs for their employees, where you can actually put your faculty, equipment, and supplies to use at another time, day, evening, to meet an employer's need and generate new revenue that you may not have at this present time. Credentialing and micro-credentialing, we already heard Suzanne talk a little bit about this in regards to the new industry requirements. We're hearing new buzz terms, of course, in the areas of micro certifications and digital badges. These do identify skill sets necessary for the marketplace, for your continuing education offerings, and thinking about how you offer these kinds of micro certifications. You need to be aligned with programs that recognize standards and competencies. And so in that badge that you're able to offer and micro certification, it has to align up to build towards a national certification, to build towards a final certificate or degree that's recognizable in a particular pathway, be it in healthcare, IT, manufacturing, biotech, or some of the other strategies. These are going to be important ideas to think about in that relative issue. But the most important thing you might even think about is that public-private partnership I talked about before. One of the things that I've done in the past is even create a little bit of a kind of criteria or a grid to recognize how our ideas align with each other. So as a public organization, private industry, are we both trying to get to the same kind of results for the community in the organization? You might be able to score that on a Rubik or on a Likert scale and identify the things you want in the partnership, that you need funding for a certain amount of initiatives, a certain amount of equipment, space and room, instructional skill sets that they might harbor in their employees that you need to be able to take advantage of. Once you come aligned with each other in the partnership and can identify that you have some like items in place, It's always challenging with the private organizations because at the end of the day, they are looking for some sort of return on investment, which usually means a revenue or of some kind. And we also have to have enough revenue to be able to run the program and be successful. And so there's where you have to make sure that your public-private partnership is negotiated well at the other end, and also that your university or college name is not being taken advantage of by the employer for some other notion of doing business. And so there's a couple things that you have to keep in consideration for this partnership development. Marketing and enrollment, I want you to think about what Suzanne had shared, so I don't want to duplicate on what she had referenced, but I will let you know that the market for the numbers of generations in the workplace right now make it a little more challenging than ever before. Leadership, as Becky talked about, has to be generational understanding and recognizing that somebody that is 23 and 25 in the marketplace today, with an individual who's 40 in the marketplace today, with somebody who's 60 in the marketplace today. The intentions of leadership and organization has to come back to what Becky talked about. Your orient of your life and your story, telling your story and understanding that, and being able to share that with your colleagues. It's hard to become professionally personal today. People are challenged with some of those things, especially in virtual companies more than ever. But what you'll want to do is recognize that you're marketing to these individuals as well as working with these individuals, and how you communicate and market to gain enrollment in all of those areas of ages has to be truly intentional in their initiatives. So the videos that Suzanne talked about and shared with us, those videos will apply to certain age groups. And then you'll need to make sure you're on other platforms. NACCE's taking some really active steps right now to be engaged in TikTok and Instagram and other tools that help us reach the next leaders and next organizational operational people. So NACCE's been focused on helping think about how we reach students, how we help our partners reach students with program initiatives and ideas, to also include some of the strategies that you're hearing today. Staff and curriculum thinking about the staff and their curriculum initiatives is truly a challenge, and that's what I was just talking about in regards to thinking about the audience that's in your classroom. And then how are you going to use different initiatives around your faculty's experience to your students' experience in that course offering? The faculty's lack of experience in using some digital technology can affect how students are going to behave when they're used to using technology every day. And so how we build out curriculum today and aligning with the new market space will be important for the retention initiatives that I talked about in the very first slide, when we're talking about enrollment and retention. And retention, during my time as an assistant vice chancellor, is one of the biggest challenges. We could set really high goals in lots of areas within the system, but the retention always was the biggest challenge for us. And you have to be intentional in your efforts towards this. The last thing I'll end with is just thinking about entrepreneurship and education. Top 5 issues as the National Association for Community College Entrepreneurship. We know that capital and financial literacy is one of the key elements for finance success and entrepreneurship. We have programs and initiatives that are aligning with this. We've created special initiatives with Intuit and also QuickBooks as part of that process, to include the Verizon digital readiness programs. We've got online tools that help in this initiative. We're trying to make sure that we recognize that while this is a top issue for you, we actually have programs you can embed in your credit or online non-credit classes that can help you meet some of those initial challenges. Thinking about that access to capital also means understanding and knowing the gaps that exist between angel investors, the idea of working with venture capitalist groups, and also new funding online strategies. And the understanding how to deal with loans and investment banks is also a part of that capital investment challenge. The next slide actually talks about AI, and we've already know that we're trying to figure out how we can use AI in our strategic planning for a business plan, and we have some strategies around that. We're working with a couple tools in our initiative with our veteran entrepreneurship program, and we're implementing some online AI tools that will help the participants be able to build a business plan at a low cost initiative and using particular tools in our programs and workshops. Your mindset is where we started with Becky talking about emotional intelligence and thinking about how you're working and giving yourself time to be successful, to also think about that for the students in that process for retention. Building exercises and examples of opportunity to work in groups and also do different things can make an important difference. We've actually, even as a NACCE organization, all just participated in a DISC assessment so we can understand different styles and personalities. We actually take it upon ourselves each staff meeting to engage in some level of training or stress ideas in regards to communications to improve our organization. And we have some strategies to think about that entrepreneurial mindset that will help you and your staff and your organization improve in these areas. We're focusing on ecosystems. I actually, before I joined NACCE, was actually in the Gainesville ecosystem, which included the University of Florida's incubator, $1 billion incubator accelerator. I was leading an incubator at Santa Fe College. The city had an incubator. There's an agricultural incubator. There's also a non-for-profit that runs initiatives, and they give out awards in entrepreneurship. Their ecosystem was really strong in thinking about how they serve their community, and whether they were reaching out to the rural aspects of that particular community or the veterans or initiatives to serve community groups. We constantly were focusing on understanding our ecosystem, which included the SBA, SBDC, SCORE, the Chamber of Commerce, and everybody understanding the real role, not just signing an MOU because of the sake of that we're in business together, but signing the MOU because it's highly important. That we understand exactly what each of us will do. I know we're coming up on the last few minutes, and so in closing, I'd like to think think about the scaling with purpose and having a meaningful way to build out your initiatives with the right partners and the right initiatives is a challenge. You can use AI as part of that tool, and you can use the initiative on the ecosystem I just explained to you to build that model and be able to include those initiatives. I wanted to make sure we did finish on time, Suzanne, and I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, if anybody has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Also, Dr. Corbin, Dr. Hightower, and I are all on LinkedIn. So obviously you can't flip your screen with these links, but if you just search our names, you'll be able to find us. And if you want to contact any of us directly, if you go to NACCE.com, there's a staff page and it will link to all of our emails. Let's see if I'm seeing any. I'm not really seeing any questions. We were pretty thorough though today, Dr. Hightower and Dr. Corbin. So well, let's give it one more minute and then we'll call it a day. It's like most of us are on the East Coast, the NACCE staff. So it's 5 o'clock here and not seeing any questions. I'm going to thank you all for coming. And please, we have webinars every month. So please check it out at NACCE.com under professional development and see if there's anything else that you'd be interested in taking.